Welcome to Movie Bites. Today, we're taking a trip down memory lane to revisit the 1994 basketball drama, Above the Rim. This film wasn't just about the game, it was about the choices that define us, the streets that shape us, and the dreams that push us forward. We'll dive into the real names and ages of the iconic cast members like Kyle Watson, Shep, Birdie, and more, and explore how they've changed since their time in the spotlight. Kyle Watson, played by Duane Martin in Above the Rim, 1994, was the definition of a cocky, talented baller with dreams bigger than his ego. He had the skills, the confidence, and the shot. But what he didn't have was patience. Kyle wanted to make it to the big leagues, but instead of staying humble and grinding, he let his attitude get in the way. This dude thought he was the guy on the court, but let's not forget, his competition was no joke. He got caught between two worlds, the disciplined, structured guidance of his high school coach and the street temptations brought on by Birdie, played by none other than Tupac Shakur. Birdie saw talent in Kyle, but let's be real, he also saw an opportunity to control him. Kyle had a choice: stick to the straight path or take the shortcut through the streets. At the time, Duane Martin was 28, playing a high schooler, which, let's be honest, was a common thing in the 90s. Now at 59, he's had a solid career beyond Above the Rim. He's been in films like White Men Can't Jump, 1992, Deliver Us from Eva, 2003, and The Seat Filler, 2004. On TV, he's been in classics like All of Us and Real Husbands of Hollywood, where he showed off his comedic chops. These days, he keeps a lower profile, but for many fans, Kyle Watson will always be that hot-headed baller who had to learn the hard way that talent alone ain't enough. You gotta have heart. Shepard, or Shep, played by Leon Robinson, was beyond frustrating at first. He walked around like nothing mattered, silent, brooding, barely reacting. But then, when you learn his backstory, it almost makes sense. Back in the day, Shep was the guy on the court. But one night, he and his best friend were hooping on a rooftop. Why was that even a thing? And his friend went over the edge. Just like that. Gone. I mean, who puts a hoop on a wall at the top of a building? That moment destroyed Shep. He gave up on basketball, on himself, on everything. Losing his mom later only pushed him further into his shell. Years later, he's back in the neighborhood, just trying to lay low. But life, and Birdie, had other plans. Kyle needed a mentor, and Birdie was dragging him into his world. Shep wanted no part of it, but when it became clear that Kyle was heading down the wrong path, he had to step up. That final game? That was his redemption, proving to himself, to Kyle, and to everyone else that he still had heart. Leon Robinson was 32 at the time, bringing that quiet, haunted energy that made Shep unforgettable. Now at 63, he's still acting, known for the 5 heartbeats and Cool Runnings. But for Above the Rim fans, Shep will always be the fallen legend who had to lose everything before realizing he still had something left to fight for. Monroe, portrayed by Byron Mins, didn't need a lot of screen time to leave an impression in Above the Rim. As the high school security officer, he wasn't just there to enforce rules, he actually cared. While Shep drifted through life like a ghost, Monroe was the steady one, keeping order without making a scene. He had a way of shutting things down before they escalated, whether it was diffusing hallway drama or stepping in when Shep and Kyle's mom had that heated confrontation. He didn't have to raise his voice or throw his weight around. His presence alone commanded respect. Mins was 32 when Above the Rim dropped in 1994, but by then he had already made a mark in black cinema. His portrayal of Ray Ray in South Central 1992 was unforgettable. He played the cold, calculating street boss who held Deuce's future in his hands. That role alone solidified his place in the culture, proving he could embody both power and intimidation with ease. Beyond Above the Rim and South Central, he had a role in Trespass, 1992, standing alongside Hollywood heavyweights, and later brought laughs in Black Dynamite, 2009. In recent years, he's kept a low profile, but his impact remains. Hopefully one day we'll see him back on screen, reminding everyone why he's one of the most underrated talents out there. Malika, played by Tonya Pinkins, was the definition of a strong black mother. She worked hard, sacrificed, and did everything she could to keep her son on the right path. Kyle had big dreams, and an even bigger ego, but Malika wasn't about to let him run wild. She reminded him real quick who was in charge, shutting down his attitude with that firm, no-nonsense love only a mother can give. But here's the thing, Malika wasn't just living for Kyle. She had her own life to live too, and that's where Shepard came in. Kyle could not stand the idea of his mom moving on, especially with Shep. He was a full-on mama's boy, and let's be real, it was cringe watching him get so territorial. It was like he expected her to put her happiness on hold forever. Pinkins played Malika with depth, making her more than just the worried, supportive mother. She was firm, loving, and layered, torn between protecting her son and allowing herself to embrace something new. At 32, she brought that complexity to the screen, and now at 64, she's still going strong. She's been in films like Strapped, 1993, and Enchanted, 2007, showing her versatility across different genres. For many fans, she'll always be remembered as Malika, a woman who loved hard, stood strong, and wasn't about to let anyone, not even her own son, dictate how she lived her life. The Sassy Waitress, played by Iris Little Thomas, was one of those characters who didn't have a ton of screen time but made every second count. She worked at the local cafe Shepard always visited, and from the moment she laid eyes on him, she was intrigued. I mean, here was this tall, brooding man who came in every day, sat alone, ordered the same meal, and barely said a word. She wasn't just going to let that slide. She had to call it out, because, seriously, what was his deal? It was clear she was feeling him a little, but Shep? He wasn't giving her anything. She tried, though. She gave him playful jabs, tried to pull him out of whatever dark place he was stuck in. It wasn't just about flirting. She genuinely wanted to know why he carried so much weight on his shoulders. Maybe she thought she could be the one to get him to crack a smile. Maybe even open up. But Shep wasn't having it. He shut her down, and you could see that little flicker of disappointment in her eyes. It wasn't just rejection. It was like she realized in that moment that he was too far gone. Iris Little Thomas was 37 at the time and is now 67. She's had roles in Malcolm X, 1992, Law & Order, 1990, Boycott, 2001, and Everyday People, 2004. But to Above the Rim fans, she'll always be the waitress who put herself out there. Bug was that dude who just couldn't catch a break if it was hand-delivered to him. Played by Marlon Wayans in Above the Rim, 1994, he was Kyle's boy fresh out of prison, stepping back into a world that had already left him behind. He could hoop, sure, but let's be real. He wasn't out there breaking ankles like Kyle. Still, he wanted in on the action, and that's how he ended up linking Kyle with Birdie. But man, you had to feel for Bug. He was like that one friend who's always down for the ride but never gets any credit. Birdie kept him around, but he never really respected him, just strung him along like an unpaid intern at a crime syndicate. Bug wasn't a bad dude, but he had that survival energy, like a stray dog who just wants a home but will bite if you push him too far. And push him they did. Nobody saw it coming when Bug pulled the trigger on Birdie. One second he's getting punked, the next he's sending the boss man to the afterlife. Talk about an unexpected plot twist. Marlon Wayans played the role to perfection, bringing that raw mix of frustration, insecurity, and "I've had enough of this" energy. By then, he was already known in the industry, but his career really took off after that. He went on to star in Scary Movie 2000, White Chicks 2004, and Little Man 2006, proving he could do both comedy and drama effortlessly. Back then, Marlon was just 22, but now at 52, he's still one of the hardest-working entertainers out there. Whether he's making us laugh or surprising us with dramatic roles, one thing's for sure, Bug will always be that underdog who finally got the last word. Flip, played by the legendary Bernie Mac, was more than just a homeless guy from the block. He was a reminder of how quickly life can humble you. When he first stepped on the court, challenging Kyle to make that first shot, he was brushed off like he was nothing. Too old, too broken, too forgotten. But Flip wasn't always down bad. Back in the day, he had game, and deep down, he still had that competitive fire. One of the most heartbreaking moments was when he looked at Shepard and said, "Don't forget about me." That line hit different. Flip wasn't just talking to Shep, he was talking to the world. He was living proof of what happens when time moves on and leaves you behind. It made you wonder, was he really crazy, or did he just know too much? But even through the sadness, Bernie Mac brought something special to the role. He had that effortless humor, even in the darkest moments, and a presence that made every scene feel real. He was 35 at the time, already making waves in the comedy world. But it wasn't until the late 90s and early 2000s that he truly became a household name. He stole scenes in Friday, 1995, The Players Club, 1998, Ocean's 11, 2001, and of course, The Bernie Mac Show, where his raw, no-nonsense humor made him a legend. Tragically, he passed away in 2008 at just 50 years old, but his impact is forever. Bernie Mac wasn't just funny, he was real. And just like Flip, he'll never be forgotten. Birdie. Just the name carried weight. Played by the legendary Tupac in Above the Rim, 1994, Birdie wasn't just a street hustler, he was the boss. Slick, ruthless, and always 2 steps ahead, he ran the streets and controlled the neighborhood basketball scene like it was his personal empire. If a game was being played, best believe Birdie had his hands in it. He didn't just watch the tournament, he owned it, recruiting the best talent to make sure his squad dominated. That's where Kyle came in. Birdie saw the raw talent, but more importantly, he saw Kyle's weakness, his desperation to make it big. And Birdie? He fed off that. He flashed the money, the lifestyle, the protection, making it clear. You roll with me, you win. But there was no real choice. Once you were in with Birdie, you belonged to him. But even the smartest players slip up. Birdie thought he had the game on lock, but the one person he never took seriously, Bug, turned out to be his downfall. In a shocking moment, the underdog took out the top dog, proving that no king stays on the throne forever. Tupac was just 23 when he played Birdie, but he brought a realness to the role that made it unforgettable. And if we're talking classic Pac performances, Juice has got to be at the top. Bishop? That was next level. Gone too soon at 25, Tupac left behind a legacy that still runs the game. His music, his films, his impact is untouchable. For Above the Rim fans, Birdie will always be that smooth-talking, unpredictable villain who thought he ran the game, until the game ran him. Birdie's girl, played by Malika, was always right there by Birdie's side, one of the many women who entertained him. She was the definition of a submissive woman, never questioning him, always following his lead, and playing her role without hesitation. Whether it was standing by him at the club or riding along in his world of power and control, she never strayed. Even in the end, when everything came crashing down and Birdie was taken out, she was right there, witnessing it all. Malika was just 24 when she took on the role in Above the Rim. But unlike many of her co-stars, her acting career never really took off. She chose to step away from the industry and has kept a very private life since then. While it would have been great to see her return to the screen, she's instead focused on making a difference in other ways. Nowadays, she dedicates her time to giving back, engaging in community-based initiatives, and supporting important causes. Recently, she played a role in supporting breast cancer research, using her platform to raise awareness and contribute to the fight against the disease. At 54, she may have left Hollywood behind, but her impact continues in a different way. Fans may always remember her as Birdie's loyal girl, but in reality, she's carving out her own legacy far beyond the role that introduced her to audiences. Motow, played by Wood Harris, was the kind of character that sent chills down your spine. He wasn't just Birdie's muscle, he was his shadow, his enforcer, and his most dangerous weapon. There was something unsettling about how easily Motow moved through violence, like it was second nature. He didn't just threaten people, he meant it, and you knew he'd follow through without hesitation. He wasn't playing a role, he was that guy. Motow had no remorse, no hesitation, no fear. If Birdie gave an order, he executed it, no questions asked. And that blind loyalty became his downfall. When Birdie told him to take out Shep, he pulled up strapped to a basketball tournament like it was just another day. Who does that? This dude. And that's what made him terrifying. But the streets don't play favorites. Just as easily as he dealt out violence, it came back to him, and in the end, he was the one who got taken out. Wood Harris brought Motow to life with an intensity that's defined his career. At 25, he was just getting started, but over the next 3 decades, he became a force in the industry. He acted in Remember the Titans, 2000, and solidified his status with an unforgettable performance as Ace in Paid in Full, 2002. Now 55, Harris is still delivering, proving that he's one of the most versatile and underrated actors out there. Bob, played by Sean Michael Howard, was that loyal friend who never really got the respect he deserved. He and Kyle had been hooping together since they were kids, sticking by each other through the junior leagues. But the second Bug got out of prison, Bob got pushed to the sidelines like he didn't even matter. Let's be real. Bob wasn't the toughest or the most confident guy on the court. He didn't have Kyle's talent, and he definitely didn't have Bug's street edge. He always looked like he was one bad game away from getting benched permanently. But despite that, you couldn't help but feel sorry for him. He was the type of friend who was always there, always trying, even when nobody really gave him his due. Sean Michael Howard was 25 when he played Bob, and he brought that soft-spoken, overlooked energy to the role perfectly. He had a way of making Bob feel real, like that one friend we all know who tries to keep up but just can't quite fit in. Outside of Above the Rim, Sean had a role in The Cable Guy, 1996, and has made a career out of popping up in various TV shows, usually in guest roles. He might not have been the biggest name in Hollywood, but his performance as Bob was memorable for anyone who watched Above the Rim. Even if Kyle forgot about him when Bug came back, real ones know, Bob was a true friend. Starnes, played by Henry Simmons, wasn't the loudest or flashiest player on Kyle's team, but he had heart, and he believed in playing for the team, not just for himself. While Kyle was out there trying to prove he was the best, Starnes was the one side-eyeing his selfishness, disgusted by how his teammate refused to play the game the right way. You could tell he wasn't here for the drama, he just wanted to win as a team. Henry Simmons was 24 when he took on this role, and even though it wasn't the biggest part in Above the Rim, it was just the beginning of a career that would only go up from there. By 2000, he had landed a major role as Detective Baldwin Jones on NYPD Blue, which put him in the Hollywood spotlight. From that moment on, Simmons became a familiar face on television, consistently taking on leading and supporting roles in various hit shows. At 54, he's still out here thriving, proving that his talent and presence are undeniable. Whether it's crime dramas, action series, or something completely different, Simmons continues to make his mark, showing no signs of slowing down. Richie, played by Michael Rispoli, was one of those characters who carried himself like he was always in the know. He had connections, he had influence, and he made sure people saw it. A frequent visitor at Birdie's club, Richie was well-versed in the game of basketball, not just as a fan, but as someone who kept an eye on rising talent. He knew who had potential, who was worth betting on, and most importantly, who could be useful to the right people. Always dressed sharp, Richie had a signature look, slick suits, a chain with a round pendant, and that extra touch of wearing it over his tie, as if to make sure everyone noticed. He had a certain presence, the kind that made you wonder just how deep his connections ran. Michael Rispoli was 34 when Above the Rim hit theaters, and by then, he was already carving out a steady career in film and television. Over the years, he's stacked up more than 50 acting credits, appearing in a mix of gritty crime dramas, action-packed films, and compelling TV roles. Now 64, Rispoli remains a recognizable face in the industry, consistently delivering performances that bring authenticity and depth to every role he takes on. Whether he's playing a connected insider like Richie, or someone completely different, he knows how to command the screen without overdoing it. Coach Mike Rollins, played by David Bailey, wasn't just a coach. He was a force of discipline in a world that thrived on chaos. He believed in structure, teamwork, and earning your place on the court. The problem? His star player, Kyle, wasn't always on board with that mindset. From the moment Kyle stepped on the court, you could see the tension between him and Rollins. Kyle wanted the spotlight, Rollins wanted the win. And to win, he needed a team, not a one-man show. Every time Kyle tried to take over by himself, you could see the frustration in Rollins' face. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Kyle's talent, he just knew raw talent without discipline was a ticking time bomb. So when Kyle got too full of himself, Rollins did what most coaches wouldn't dare to do. He benched him. That moment was powerful because it showed Rollins' true character. He wasn't about feeding egos. He was about the game, about doing things the right way, even if it meant making enemies. David Bailey, 61 at the time, had been acting since the 70s, and you could feel his experience in every scene. He played Rollins with the perfect balance of authority and frustration, making him feel like a real coach who had seen it all. Tragically, Bailey passed away on November 25, 2004, drowning in his pool at 71. But his legacy, much like Coach Rollins' philosophy, reminds us that true greatness isn't just about skill. It's about heart, discipline, and knowing when to put the team first. And that's a wrap on Above the Rim, a film that gave us more than just a game. It gave us a story about ambition, loyalty, and the cost of the choices we make. Decades later, it still holds a special place in the Black community, reminding us of a time when the streets and the sport were one and the same. Which cast member's journey surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a trip down memory lane. Thanks for watching Movie Bites, where the classics live on. See you next time.